now, moving on to our next presentation is actually a live panel, which will be chaired by the fantastic Claire Tavernier, who's our Chair of Trustee Board at Charities Digital. The panel discussion will be on getting creative with digital fundraising. She'll be joining us along a couple, actually four or five great speakers. You'll be able to ask questions at any time during the discussions, and Claire and the speaker will be able to answer that at the end. So without further ado, let me hand over to you, Claire.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I hope everybody is having a great time. That was a really fascinating discussion that we've just heard. But we're moving into a slightly different area. Well, still obviously focusing on digital fundraising. We're going to look at some fascinating case studies around being really creative with digital fundraising. And we have a wonderful panel of speakers. We have Kirsty Alexander, who's the Individual Giving and Legacies Manager at Shelterbox. We have Athar Abedi, who is the Head of Social and Digital Activation at the British Heart Foundation. And then we have Matt Smith, who is the senior consultant, I think, and the interim Head of Fundraising at Brain Tumor Research. So a very warm welcome to you all. First of all, we're really glad to have you here. And I'm going to actually start maybe with you, Matt, because you've just come out of a really fascinating Facebook initiative that I'd love it if you could just give us a little bit of an overview and some of the lessons learned and how it worked, and would you do it again? Would you do it differently? Just your high level summary.
Thanks, Claire. And yes, good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here today. So yes, with my interim director of fundraising hat on at Brain Tumor Research, over the last few months, we've planned and delivered a Facebook challenge event. So the event was walk 10,000 steps every day in February. A very classic, simple, straightforward fundraising activity. We launched the activity on the 4th of January, purely with Facebook adverts, driving supporters to join a Facebook group. And in that community, we then asked people to register for the activity and then fundraise directly on Facebook. So the entire activity took place on Facebook. We didn't try to take anybody off of it onto our own website or to other platforms. It was solely through Facebook, working with the great team at GivePanel. And that would be one of my key takeaways for those who haven't investigated, working with GivePanel and the power tools that they provide in terms of making Facebook really sing in terms of income. So from the 4th of Jan, we drove 15,000 people to join the Facebook group, which for a charity the size of Brain Tumor Research was quite staggering for us. Of those 15,000 people, 10,000 then went on to register for the event through our form on Facebook. And of those 10,000, 3,000 people committed to some degree of fundraising. Now, I'm delighted to say that over the course of January and February, and obviously we completed the event on Sunday, the last day of February, those 3,000 people will have gone on to raise £700,000 for the charity on Facebook, which is just a staggering in terms of the reach and then the power tools that you can use on Facebook at the moment. We used a couple of
just to give me a sense of proportion compared to your sort of normal fundraising campaigns. How does that compare?
Both of those numbers are by far the largest in terms of activity for the organisation. Of course, a large campaign for us is sort of seeing 1,000 to 1,500 people sort of register for something and then go on to raise sort of 1 to 200,000. So it was something in the magnitude of 3 to 4 times bigger than anything we've kind of done before. And a lot of the principles that we try to follow, again, at the suggestion of the team at GivePanel, keeping the proposition really simple and straightforward, and then using incentives like t-shirts and medals to really drive people to take the steps, to register on the form, give us their address so we can send the t-shirt and medal, but then also to use the Facebook fundraising kind of platform to raise money for us.
And we're getting a lot of people from the attendees supporting your recommendation of GivePanel. It sounds like they're a really interesting partner, and we'll go back to partners and working with, who you should be working with. But I'd like to turn to Kirsty now to maybe talk a little bit about your recent initiative with Shelterbox.
Yeah, morning everyone. So we've had a couple. But in the last 2 years, we launched a new subscription product, which is our book club. We have a difficulty with regular giving because we're an emergency disaster relief aid charity. So people give to us when something high profile happens, and because our fundraising proposition is it's so tangible what we do, people kind of give to us once and then job done. So we were trying to increase our regular givers. We've seen that like subscription packages just generally were on the rise. I mean, we've all got subscriptions to Netflix and razor boxes, beauty boxes, all of these things. So we just kind of tried to tap into that trend and created our book club. And differently from what Matt just said, the thing about our book club is that we recruit everyone online. The journey is all online, but they actually receive hard copy paperback books. So that part of the journey is offline. So it's a mixture of online, offline. And it's been really successful. Yeah, we've recruited about over 3,000 book club members, so 3,000 regular givers in the last couple of years. So
and for you, that's been a great way to, I guess, pivot from those one-off gifts and start to move into recurring giving, and that's been something that's worked really well for you in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it gives us some stable income, which really helps and means that we're not so dependent on like high-profile emergencies and things. So yeah, it's been really helpful.
Great. Well, we'll come back to that and how online and digital fundraising may be able to sort of help you move into new areas. But Athar, I think a lot of people here will be really interested to hear about your latest experience with the Amaze Foundation. And, there's been obviously a lot of publicity around it, but I'd love to hear from your perspective, what it brought to you, what it did, was it good? What are some of the lessons learned, etc.?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So, I'm sure, well, maybe a lot of you would have seen our current partnership with Amaze, which is essentially a prize draw to win a £3 million house in London. Amaze are a big company in America, and they've recently started working with charities in the UK. And so we went through a pitch process to be their chosen charity. We followed on from Teenage Cancer Trust. And so the general way that it works is that they essentially organize and run this draw, but they're fundraising for us. So we get 80% of the profits, which is predicted to be around $500,000. And the way that the partnership works is that we support directly in kind of promoting the draws. So they run ads through our Facebook page as well as on their own. They run DRTV ads, the whole lot. They leverage our ambassadors where we can, and it's a big campaign. It's quite a lot of work, and as I head up the social team, one of the things that the money's great and all of that obviously, but there is quite a lot of work involved on our side in terms of sort of managing reputation of the charity. People have got lots of questions about whether or not it's a scam, which it isn't, whether or not we should be promoting what is considered to be gambling, which to an extent it is, but there's a lot of, it has created a huge amount of work for my team. We've got very robust FAQs and everything, but that's been the sort of bulk of what my team have had to pick up on. And managing a relationship with any corporate partnership of that value, as I'm sure anybody that's had experienced this will know, is quite, all corporate partners can be quite high maintenance. Amaze are no real exception to that. But all in all, it's a great opportunity for us. And the Teenage Cancer Trust, their winner was announced shortly before, during our soft launch, and it's a wonderful, it's a wonderful thing to be able to give people a nice house.
Great. So, I mean, this is brilliant because we've got 3 examples completely different, all using obviously digital fundraising, but one a very large and, you know, with some controversies attached to it, but also I'm sure transformative for the charity, a very large partnership with Amaze. Matt, you working with Facebook on something that was initially quite small, but proved to be really, I guess, viral is the word, and really took off in a way that was huge. And then Kirsty, I think what's really interesting, and there's been quite a few questions about this actually in the chat. So what we're seeing is a lot of questions on Facebook, which we'll come back to, Matt, because I think there's a lot there. But Kirsty, there's a lot of questions about and support for taking something that is a trend, boxes, and then using it to benefit the charities. But questions about the cost to set up, and whether you're breaking even, whether it's having a positive impact already, or what's the number, you know, because 3,000 is a big number, which, you know, is fantastic, but is there a sort of minimum number to make it worthwhile? And also some very specific questions. What are the books? Are they related to the charity? Is there a theme? You know, I think a little bit more information. And did you work with anybody to do it? Did you work with agencies? How did that work?
Yeah, so on the first question, we haven't broken even yet, and that in most part is because on your third question, yes, we worked with agencies to set up, and that was quite an expensive process. I can talk to people if they're interested later on, and Rima, I think it is, about which agencies we work with and that kind of thing. So no, we haven't broken even yet, but our cost per acquisition has dropped right down. So I think on a good month, we'll be looking between £20 and £30 to acquire a brand new, completely cold recruit, which is great. And yeah, it costs £10 a month, our book club, and well, like a minimum kind of £10. Some people give a bit more. And our margin is that they pay monthly, but they get a book every 6 weeks. So that's where the kind of the margin is there. We work, you know, there's like the scale of economy as well. So we're working with a publisher, and as we've got more and more members, the cost of the books goes down. So yeah, it's just about to break even, and also like with more members now, once we get to that break even point,
it'll start going. Yeah, exactly. Once you cover the fixed costs. Well, I think there's a lot there in terms of questions. We're not going to go into more details because I want to make sure. But as you said, please, everybody who's interested, join Kirsty and Remo afterwards, and she can go into a little bit more detail, because that's a really interesting initiative, and there's a lot of very specific questions. Can we go back to Facebook and maybe with you, Matt? So some of the questions, I mean, there are some general questions about working with Facebook as a partner, and whether there are any concerns about that. And I was wondering whether that was something that you discussed in your charity. And then there are questions more specifically about, you know, how to choose demographics, how to target, and, you know, generally how to make the most of the platform, I think.
Great, yeah, thanks, Claire. So I think in terms of working with a partner like Facebook, it's similar to what Attar sort of said earlier about working with any partner. It comes with challenges and with things to consider, and certainly with working with somebody with the power of Facebook, thinking about the data and privacy kind of concerns are real. I would recommend having Facebook fundraising as part of your online, you know, digital fundraising mix. I certainly wouldn't solely rely on it and have it as your own one and only kind of digital online income source. So I'd look to have a mix of Facebook Just Giving, you know, and the other platforms, as well as your own in-house online donations if you're able to. And then in terms of demographic profiling, to take back to our example for 10,000 steps, we looked at a couple of our classic supported demos. We had one built out that was very much sort of a lookalike demographic for, you know, brain tumor research supporters are of a very specific demographic that I'm sure a lot of people are joining us today have similar sort of ages and genders and geographical dimensions to it. But we did also look to build an audience that was slightly younger than our traditional, and try and encourage a younger demographic, those in their 30s and 40s to take part in the activity as well. We obviously were able to use interests such as getting fit, losing weight for the new year. One of the key parts of the marketing drive was that we launched on January 4th. We were coming back from Christmas and New Year. You know, getting fit for the new year is a big thing at that time, and using that as a hook for some of our demographic work as well was important. And I think just the beautiful thing about Facebook is testing different audiences. You can switch things on and off it kind of as you go, and don't be afraid to try and to reach new audiences, new demographics, and that's something that we're looking to do with our next Facebook challenge activity in May, is to see how successful we can be with perhaps a quite starkly different audience.
That's really interesting. So it's really trial and error, and just keep looking at the numbers and adjust as you go. I know the British Heart Foundation's work quite a lot with Facebook as well. Was that also your experience?
Yeah, I mean, we are predominantly, like, we're looking in the Facebook challenge space as well, but at the moment all of our income is coming predominantly from birthday fundraisers. We have pretty large volumes, so we're clearing between 100 and 150k a month in birthday fundraisers at the minute. Also working with Give Panel, should add another plug for them. But we've been working, you know, we work really hard to iterate and with them to iterate and improve that stewardship journey, to just to get it just right. And it's quite a lot, you know, we turned it on without working with Give Panel, without doing anything, and we were still seeing a large chunk of income. So, you know, any charity that's got the opportunity to turn it on, just turn it on and take the money. It's all good. And you know, if you have the time to invest, or essentially what will happen is your fundraising team will see the money, you know, be like, oh, right, how can I make more money? And then you'll get the opportunity to find the budget to either work with Give Panel or invest in headcount to provide stewardship. But, you know, it is, you know, it's a no-brainer. You get 100% of it. There's no fees with Facebook currently. The gift aiding has been approved by HMRC. So, you know, there was some concerns about that previously, but that's now more or less not an option. So yeah, just turn it on first and build up to doing to doing challenges. But it is a real leveler, and the events of the sort that Matt are talking about really is open to anyone, because people are more drawn to the event itself than the charity that's running it. If they want to run 100k in a month or walk 10,000 steps a day, and you're going to give them the structure to do it and put them in a group where they'll be able to sort of, you know, engage with other people that are doing it, they just will. If they want to do it, they will. So, you know, you don't have to worry so much about whether or not you're targeting your warmest audience. You should be looking to target people that want to do that event.
Yeah, I don't know, Kirsty, if that's something you've done as well, or how you work with Facebook as a campaign. We're getting a lot of questions also for all of you, but maybe I'll come to you, Kirsty, about promotion. Do you promote on Facebook? Do you promote on other platforms? How do you, you know,
yeah,
publicize?
so almost completely on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook first, and I would say that we have like conflicting campaigns internally, and with book club now we're sort of doing an always on campaign, so we have to get quite granular with our targeting, I guess, but we're really agile with it. So for instance, the next book that we're doing is an International Women's Day book, so we started targeting like feminist audiences with the kind of the images of the books that we would be using. And if when we get quite targeted with stuff, that's when we see the cost per acquisition really drop, and we're just constantly changing our creative and thinking about those audiences all the time. So yeah.
So that's a really interesting thing to think about when you're doing all of this digital fundraising compared to a physical event. Obviously, you can adjust constantly. It's not a switch it on and let it run. You can go back and move things around. Do you do a lot of that? I don't know if Kirsty or anybody. Kirsty, you've just said you constantly adjust. Matt, I think, is that also, is it every day, every week, every month? How do you can constantly monitor and adjust? Because I think that's a big mentality shift from offline campaigns.
It's a great question. I mean, daily, to be honest, we're looking at how stuff's performing. We don't go a 24-hour period without kind of reviewing how something's going. I think the key point to make is that the Facebook algorithm likes you to spend money on it, and turning stuff completely off is a big no-no. And so one thing I'd recommend is, even if you're bringing your spend right down, to keep spending on Facebook advertising throughout the year, because what we found is where you dramatically switch stuff off, building that momentum back up, the algorithm, you know, benefits those who are spending more and have more ads running. That's just a fact of their business. And so what one point I'd make is to make sure that you're thinking about how the marketing algorithm is working for you, and try to make sure the game is being played in your favor. Keep momentum behind campaigns, and don't dramatically switch things off and on, because that can mean you have to start from square one again.
And Kirsty, we're getting a lot of love for the book club, including people who have found it through Instagram targeted ads. So clearly, whatever you're doing, it's working. I was wondering, so we're talking a lot about Facebook, and obviously it's a huge platform now. Any other groups, platforms, areas that are emerging at the moment? I'm thinking about gaming and gamers and streamers, etc., which is an area that we've started to talk about in recent, I think, month, as people are looking for new avenues online. I don't know if Athar, I don't know if that's something that you've looked at all.
It's something that we are looking at to sort of build out. Like, we do see increasing numbers of people doing streaming for charities. We don't have as a particularly fully formed program for that, but we have signed up to Tiltify, which is the main sort of fundraising platform for streamers. And although the focus kind of currently is on gamers, we've got our long-term plan is to look at streaming more holistically. People, I mean, gamers feels like the low-hanging fruit, so that's where we're going to start. But you know, people do live streams for everything now. Twitch is predominantly gaming, but you can find a channel for anything on there. So it is definitely a huge growth area, but yeah, we're working on it.
And Matt, any other thoughts? I mean, is it opening up new demographics, for instance, that you maybe can't get to on Facebook?
Yeah, it's absolutely helping the sector to reach a younger demographic and access different channels. So a few case studies that I would point to for those who want to go away and kind of investigate a bit further. Special Effect are a UK-based charity who are deeply embedded in the games industry, and they literally just had their big annual event, which is called Games Blast, which happened last weekend. I think they've raised over £200,000 across 3 days through their gaming fundraising. They have a lot of relationships with games developers, a lot of relationships with gaming influencers who do live stream across Twitch and other channels. So Special Effects is a really great example. But to Atar's point around live streaming being a bigger opportunity for us all, a couple of examples I would point to. If you all remember from lockdown 1, when pub quizzes being live streamed became like a big thing, and we all got invited to a pub quiz every day. There's a couple of great examples of charities really latching onto that trend. Marie Curie used Tiltify to host their celebrity-fronted pub quizzes. I went along to the Louis Theroux hosted quiz last year and had a great time. I think they've raised somewhere between 70 and 80,000 pounds through their live stream pub quizzes, so there is money there too. And another example I'd always point to in terms of live streaming and those who are kind of perhaps early adopters is Breast Cancer Now and their regular live streams on Facebook. So the live streaming is an opportunity available to us all if we've got Facebook as a channel as well. There's not necessarily a need to investigate Twitch and Tiltify and other platforms. You can live stream, you know, directly onto Facebook too. So I'd have a look at Breast Cancer Now and their regular sessions with nurses and experts. And I know the breast cancer community really value them. That's another way that you can bring service and other aspects of your organisation to life through live streams.
Just to clarify, because the questions come up, Tiltify, is that the name of the platform that you recommended? Yeah.
Yeah, Tiltify, a US-based company that entered the UK market around two or so years ago now, and they've got some really great interactive and integrated software that works very well with Twitch, and just get live streaming, get gaming as a culture, and have built tools specifically for that.
So we're getting one, I think, really interesting question, which is what happens when lockdown ends, when real life starts again? You know, are you, and Kirsty, maybe if we can come to you to start with, obviously your initiative started way before all of this, but do you think you're going to go back to purely live event? Do you think you're going to see a mixed model? I mean, how do you see the future?
So lockdown has given us a chance to really kind of optimize what we're doing. We weren't doing kind of live discussion events before, which we now do. We have Q&As with our authors, all of these kinds of things, and these have come about as because of lockdown and everyone getting used to being on Zoom all the time. I think we probably will still carry on offering these things. But I'd like to have some like kind of real life community kind of events set up as well. So I want to sort of start pushing that. I am a little nervous about what's going to happen results wise, because, you know, people, especially at the beginning of lockdown, people weren't going out. So having a book sent to your door and being part of this community online, meeting new people, new like-minded people, bringing these people together, it's a really, really great kind of proposition during lockdown. So I'm a little nervous about what's going to happen results wise, but I think we'll just have to kind of adapt and make it into a more compelling thing to do in real life. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Well, what about you, Matt? How do you see the post-lockdown future for what you're doing?
I think the buzzword for the next few months is going to be hybrid. And much like we all got sick of hearing in these uncertain times, we're going to get sick of hearing a hybrid way of working, a hybrid way of doing stuff. And I think the return of investment on things like virtual events, the return of investment on the Facebook challenge and other models that we've seen come to fruition over the last 12 months, that return of investment is too good to shy away from. Yes, I think digital marketing is going to become more expensive again as other sectors like retail and travel come back and start spending money again. But I think a blended mix of what we saw before and what we've learned over the last 12 months is absolutely what's going to happen. Thinking that we're going to see a return to 2019 conditions is just not going to happen. What happens next is going to be completely unique and different to anything we've ever experienced before. And I think it's just worth really learning from the successes of the last 12 months. Between March and November, we basically saw 6 years in 6 months in terms of how much things sped along and how much innovation and development there were. So much to learn from and so much to try and test. I think the conditions ahead are really exciting and really positive, but thinking that we'll go back to how things were pre-March last year is just not going to happen.
Is that your view as well, Adar, that we're going to find a new model that hasn't been invented yet?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that the other guys have said, but I would also say that, you know, the immediate aftermath of this, and when things open up again, is that people will be hungry for experiences and real world experiences, as you know, testified by the fact that all the festivals that went on sale sold out immediately, despite the fact they're being like as high risk an event as you can have in this, you know, in this world. So, you know, definitely plan for a sort of changed fundraising world long term, but also be prepared for, you know, real appetite for your challenge events, your owned events. People want, you know, people that have been sort of like had to cancel their marathon plans, have had to cancel all of these things. They've all been training this whole time, like they are primed and ready to go. And so, you know, just don't turn your back on those guys. They're waiting for you in your events to be announced.
So yeah, don't forget those. I mean, I can definitely vouch that there have been a lot of marathon runners in my area over the last year, so they're all ready to go. So don't discount them yet. I think that creates for me a question, which is skills, because obviously, as you said, Matt, you know, you've been building all these digital skills, but a lot of the charities that I think are listening to us at the moment are quite small. They don't have millions of people working in retail, and they've already had to adapt to this new world. What would be your advice in terms of building the skills in the team and creating teams that can move relatively seamlessly into this sort of a hybrid model? I don't know who would like to take that.
I'm happy to. We've got an interesting initiative going on at the moment in that I have one of my team has started a digital marketing apprenticeship with a company called Multiverse. They've had quite a lot of press recently, and it's interesting because she's in a cohort of 16 people, and they're from big companies like L'Oreal and big advertising agencies. So a lot of people are making the use of this free service. It is a big investment though. She's now committed to doing 1 day a week for the next 15 months, I think it is. So it's huge, but we think because she can learn on the job and bring, you know, she can start doing these digital campaigns for us and all the rest of it. It makes sense for us. So we're trying that at the moment. It's quite interesting.
So there are options out there for training. Some,
Yeah.
you know, it's an investment in terms of time, if nothing else, but that, you know, developing the team and developing the skills is going to be pretty crucial. Matt, Athar, I don't know if you, from your perspective, that's something that you're thinking about as well.
So I think there's loads that smaller organisations can be doing on next to no budget. I think thinking about the digital basics and getting those right, getting your website journey, understanding the data that you're collecting, and making sure that those pieces, you know, the foundations are kind of right before you start exploring anything bigger or more integrated. And then having, just to echo Kirsty's thoughts, having somebody in your team with a solid grasp of digital marketing now it's just essential. Even if that's sending on somebody on a 1 or 2 day course to understand the fundamental principles of Facebook marketing that we've talked about today, understanding PPC and kind of that world as well. I think it's an integral part of any team and organization. And then building that foundation and going on that journey. Once you've got the basic foundation steps, trying learning from larger organizations. As Athar said, the beauty of the Facebook challenge model is that it works for everybody. It provides a real level playing field from the largest of organizations all the way down to the smallest, because the fundamental principles we can all apply. You don't need a massive brand and marketing team to be able to do it. If anything, the principles behind it, you know, you need to be simple, straightforward, and get the proposition out to the masses.
Yeah, I'll add some. So I think that for smaller organizations, I would definitely, you know, don't underestimate the power of building your social, your organic social. Like as a smaller charity, you might look at the numbers and be like, well, that's not many people, but to be the chosen charity in someone's Facebook newsfeed is a privilege, because most people outside of the sector will only probably follow one charity. So those, you know, those people, they're your warmest supporters, they're your advocates, they're your amplifiers, they're the people that will, you know, that will make your campaigns sing. And also with regards to, I think I saw a question about how to promote Facebook fundraisers and birthdays in particular. That's not something you can really do proactively. Lots of people have tried, nobody's really succeeded. Facebook nudges everyone to set up a birthday fundraiser around their birthday, and the list that appears when you choose your charity to fundraise for is algorithm based on the pages that you follow and the pages that you interact with. So if you want to maximize your income from birthdays, get your warmest supporters to like your Facebook page. And that's, you know, you can do that by just a custom audience created from CRM data, target them with a page like campaign. That might sound complicated, but it's not, you know, it's not too bad. And if you've got somebody with basics in digital marketing, that's an easy project to roll out. So yeah, that would be, you know, that's my sort of starting point for smaller charities, to maximize that.
So build your organic audience,
Well, yeah,
including
certainly don't neglect them. You know, it's not all about paid, and for a small organization to be able to invest in digital marketing, the ROI is always so hard to justify. But a page like, you know, you're not just buying those impressions that you paid for, you're buying every ongoing impression from that point on. That's a lot of value.
Yeah. We have following up from the marathon theme here. We somebody here commenting that they had one supporter do a virtual marathon on his treadmill on the London Marathon Day. So and live streamed it, which that's an interesting long live stream event, but it did bring in over £1,000, which for a small charity was a huge success. So, you know, even small events like that, I think are definitely worth. It's especially, I think, and this is something that you guys have said, but really stuck with me, is if you can link it to either an emerging trend or an event. Kirsty, we're talking boxes are starting to come up. Matt, you said, you know, it's January, people are anyway looking to start exercising more. So just hook yourself onto something that's going on anyway, because that will increase your relevancy and increase your reach automatically. I want to finish, maybe I don't want to sound like a downer, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls of digital marketing, and specifically things around data, user information, GDPR. Don't want to go into a huge technical issue here, but, you know, are there any things that you want to make sure people remember as they embark on that journey?
I'll go first, if that's all right. I think just being mindful that some of the risks and challenges and barriers on digital are quite different, you know, to perhaps to others, but all of the experience that we've had over decades of PR and managing kind of crisis or you know, challenging moments, all of those principles are the same. We're just on different channels. So if you are looking to embark upon sort of live streaming fundraising, you know, having a really good PR plan if something goes a bit wrong or someone says something unfortunate, or, you know, all of those stuff, it's all of the skills kind of that we've had in the sector for decades, but just applying them to the different channels. I think we're, as a sector, we're going to have to relax a tiny bit about working with companies like Facebook, working with companies like Tiltify for the long run. They just hold too much power and too much control. But I think for me, the key word is diversification. It scares me how reliant some organizations are on one particular platform. And I think thinking about spreading that risk and spreading your fundraising and your interaction across multiple platforms is a way to mitigate that risk.
Great advice, I think. And Kirsty, you wanted to?
So I think a few challenges. I think like the fast changing sort of rules and regulations and keeping up with those. So I think someone mentioned the iOS 14 updates earlier. Just keeping up with those all the time, it's hard work, especially when you're a tiny team. I would say, like, we do have agency support and we ask them for help with that as and when they come up, which they've been really, really good at with. The other thing I would say that we also found a headache as a small team is that when you have a product and people just expect really, really fast responses on social media, on email, like they become customers rather than supporters, and they expect kind of customer service treatment rather than like supporter care treatment is a different thing. So yeah, we've had to kind of shift that and put things in place for that as well.
That's a really, really interesting point, that people are now in this world, digital world, you know, the expectation is immediate reaction, feedback, etc., and that can create a lot of weight and to carry for smaller teams. Adar, I don't know, maybe based on your experience with Amaze and having to manage some of the controversies there, if that resonates.
Yeah, but I think with data and GDPR in general, you know, the majority of the time there will be a third-party data handler, be it Just Giving, Give Panel, Tiltify, whoever it is that you're dealing with, before, you know, look at their client list, ask who they're working with. If it's one of the big top 5 charities, the likelihood is that they've been through a hell of a ride in terms of data compliance, GDPR, and all of that stuff. So that's always a good indicator. And then, you know, most people at most charities are willing to speak to smaller charities to answer their questions around that, because, you know, going through compliance and procurement is massively time consuming, and sometimes you can save yourself a lot of time by just asking that supplier if they can put you in touch with an existing client. They don't, you know, I do it quite frequently. They don't have to be in the room. You can just have an honest conversation. But that would be my main thing, because, you know, it doesn't matter what size the charity is. If you can go to them and say Macmillan are doing it, CRUK are doing it, or the BHF are doing it, or whoever, then there'll be an immediate sort of relaxation in the room, and you will then be able to kind of just move things forward. You know, you'll still have to do the work, but that reassurance piece is the starting point.
I think that's brilliant advice. And just generally, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Try to find somebody who's done it before and learn from their experience. Now, the wonderful thing about our sector is that there is that willingness to share and to compare experiences. So fantastic advice. Thank you very much, all of you as well. I've noticed that you've been in true Gen Z fashion, multitasking and answering questions as well. All that it reminds me to say is thank you so much to our wonderful panel for sharing their experience. I think it's been absolutely fascinating. And I'm handing over back to Lisa. Thank you very much.